Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. My name is John Sanders, one of the co-hosts of the show, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. You're going to hear from Eric Reploeg. He has been in pastoral ministry for many years, and his story is interesting in that he started out in, I'm going to use the word toxic, maybe a toxic, unhealthy church environment, and he is in a much healthier place today, and part of that story is his financial transformation as he's gotten involved in business, in real estate, and stuff like that. So this is an awesome conversation that myself and my co-host Les Hughes had with Eric, and we're excited to share it with you now. So sit back, get ready, here we go. Well, Eric, welcome to the EntrePastors podcast. You have officially arrived, my friend. You are
I feel it
on the show, so you've made it.
I feel it. I expect better treatment from my wife and my kids, and
no doubt.
The notoriety is really going to be helpful. Thank you.
You will find it's much easier to get reservations in restaurants now. Don't you know who I am?
Is there a card that comes with it?
We can get you one.
Okay, that's great.
Hey,
probably won't need it.
Yeah, you probably won't need it. It'll speak for itself. Oh, you're that guy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited.
Well, hey, man, you and I had a conversation recently, and I got introduced to you a little bit, and I was confident that your story is going to impact a lot of people as we unpack certain themes. So first of all, I just want to welcome you to the show. And why don't we start by this? If you can just give a brief introduction to yourself right now, gives us a snapshot of kind of your ministry picture, your business picture of what you're doing today, and then we'll go backwards and
sure. Yeah. So let me tell you where I am. I'm serving in a church in a little place called Front Royal, Virginia. We are the northernmost entrance to the Shenandoah National Park. I live in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley, and we moved here in 2005 to help a friend of mine start a church. I was his assistant. In 2015, he stepped away as pastor, but stayed in the church, and he and I are the best of friends. And so it's been almost 8 years now that I've been the pastor, and the church has grown and is healthy. And like everybody else, we survived COVID and came through very well. And the church is robust. It's a beautiful group of people. And so I get to pastor, but for the last 12 years, I have also been a full-time realtor. And, bivocation kind of gives the idea that you do both things part-time. So with real estate, it comes and goes, ebbs and flows. And so I learned the term from another friend of mine called co-vocation. And it just seemed to be a little bit more appropriate because I do both of them full-time. It's just, they kind of ebb and flow and dance around each other pretty well. So I serve this family of believers here, and we are rather informal and relaxed, and we seem to have attracted a lot of unchurched and de-churched people that are needing to recover, and it's just a safe place for them to come, and we just love what we do. Our church is kind of based on the simple church model, where we don't do a lot of stuff. We just try and do a few things really well, and it's done well for our church.
I love that. So is real estate kind of your main entrepreneurial thing that you're doing right now? Do you have any other irons in the fire at the moment?
That's my biggest moneymaker, if you will, but we have gotten into some real estate investing. We're not flipping, but we've kind of we have some buy and holds. Took advantage of low interest rates and a couple of good years in real estate, and we were able to not follow the Dave Ramsey model where we're paying cash for everything, but we are very much in the black every month. We have 3 rentals right now, plus the one that we're living in. But that's really, real estate is where I've made the coin the last 12 years.
That's cool. So tell me this, what was it and I don't remember how you found EntrePastors or how you were introduced to us, but what was it about the EntrePastors message that resonated with you?
Well, I was listening to another podcast, the Church Talk podcast with Jason Allison, and he's a friend of mine, and I just like to listen to their podcast as they come out, and this one popped up, and it nearly brought me to tears because it just resonated. I just never heard anybody affirm the life that I've lived. And I'll be honest with you. One of the things I hope we can get into is the struggle with guilt. When you are making a good living outside of what the church pays you, and my church pays me well. I mean, from day one, I've made, a good salary here, and yet, and we can go into the reasons why we got into real estate, but hearing you give permission, if you will, that it's okay to live well and enjoy life, and what it has done for us, and what it has enabled us to do has been life changing, not only for us but for our family, and then for the folks that we've been able to help, and all of that. So that then obviously turned me on to your podcast, and I've listened to the first 20 so far, and then each one as they've come out, and signed up for your first free 4-day thing. Very interested in the new program that you just threw out there for the 16 weeks. And I just want to, because I'll be honest with you, like, I love real estate and it's kind of like a second language for me now, but I'm excited to see if there's other potential streams of income that we can discover.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to tell you about our Business Launch Academy and sell that to you, but that we won't turn this into a sales call. We'll save that for another time.
It wouldn't take much of a sales pitch.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that, but I love what you're saying. And I want to ask you just a kind of a question here. Like, let's say you worked as a plumber and you also had some investment properties that were creating cash flow for you, and, creating some things in your life that made it possible for you to enjoy certain things. Like, do you think there would be that feeling of guilt of like, oh man, I wonder what my plumbing company thinks about me having properties over here. Like, why is it about the pastor thing that causes us to go, oh, this probably isn't okay for me to do this?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily just the pastor role. I think that it's partially my personality. I want everyone to like me. And so, like, I don't want anyone to think ill of me, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm not doing them the very best that I can. And so that probably plays into that as well. And I to be honest with you, like, not all pastors are that way, but a lot of them are, where they are focused on what people think of them. And I know that it's a trap and it's a struggle. But no, I think that if I owned another business, other than the fact that if I didn't feel like I could serve them well, if I owned 2 businesses and one business was preventing me from being available when I was needed, then yeah, I would have a problem with that. But real estate has always taken a backseat to ministry. And, I've always told my clients, hey, listen, I do a lot at our church on Sunday. I never tell people I'm a pastor. I just do a lot at our church. And so I can show you properties, or we can meet on, in the afternoon on Sunday or something, but, I'm not able to. And so I don't feel like I've ever sacrificed any good for the church through the process. But yeah, I don't think there's a direct comparison in my mind, and I've never considered it that way. But I do feel like, because there is such importance to what we do ministry wise, that there is almost an unrealistic expectation of what we are being asked to do. And I think we put that on ourselves an awful lot. Because I know my church, they just have never been what I hear a lot of people having to deal with. They've just always been incredibly kind. And we were very small. Like when we started, we had we kind of merged 2 smaller churches and started Virginia Hills, and we were averaging about 75. When I took over, we were averaging about 125, and it was a family, and so I never felt any angst from our congregation at all. As we grew and we got a few churchy people to come in, they had expectations on me that I did not feel that I could meet. And they wanted, all of our staff works virtually. We have no church offices at our building. And so they wanted somebody there from 9 to 5 every day in case they wanted to stop by and talk or whatever. And that's just not realistic for who we are. And there were other issues, of course, but very few people have placed any expectation on me that made me feel that way. But that's a great analogy. I just never thought about that when I was going through all my guilt.
Well, and that's something we hear on a fairly regular basis, that that pastors feel a sense of permission, or even just people that are on staff at church, like they're in that world, and then they all of a sudden have this sense of, oh, I can do two things, and I'm not cheating God, or I'm not cheating his people by thriving in this additional arena than where I'm, serving to begin with. So I'm thankful for you sharing that. And I'm also thankful that I heard you say, basically, you're in a healthy context right now where your church largely embraces what you're doing. They're not fighting against it. They're supportive. And I love that. I would pray that over every church and every pastor, that they would have that sense of blessing of their people to be in the marketplace and to be succeeding in the marketplace. But for you, it's not always been that way. Like, that has not been the story, and you shared some things with me. So I'm going to ask two questions, and I'll let you connect them however you want. I do want to hear, like, how did you get into real estate? What was it that caused you to say, I could probably use some additional income beyond what I'm making as a pastor? But I also want to hear kind of the backstory of where you started your, pastoral vocational career, ministry, church work career. And because there's themes in there that will resonate with many in our audience. So I'll let you connect those dots however you want, but take us back there if you don't mind.
Yeah. Can I put a parenthesis on my last part of the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say that I don't make it a point to make it a point that that I do other business. Like, when I'm with church people, like, I'm with them. And when I'm preaching, I rarely use a real estate illustration, because I don't want that to be a distraction from my relationship with them, or what the Holy Spirit might be doing in their life, or and in the middle, because I know what happens. Like, if I'm going along preaching and then I use a real estate illustration, their mind automatically switches to what else I'm doing. And then it's kind of hard to get it back. So I try not to make it a thing. And I don't, and it's not that I'm hiding anything. It's just that I want to be very present wherever I am. Just like I don't talk about church work much when I'm with people that I'm doing real estate with. So I don't think we have to make it a thing.
Yeah.
I think people just can't help themselves.
I'm going to offer one additional point of view. It's not a pushback, because what you're saying is valid and definitely right. Also, I would say, in the right context, this is something Les and I have a theme we've uncovered a lot on our show, and in the coaching that we've done, is where you find a pastor that is in the entrepreneurial space and doing really well and just really thriving in that and embracing that. There is a level of, I don't know if respect is the right word, but I'm going to use that word, that some in the community and in the church will bring when they recognize our pastor gets it. He gets my world. He gets what it is to be in business. Because I think sometimes there's this sense of, my pastor doesn't really know what I do. He doesn't get my world.
Yeah.
He sits in the church office all week, has no idea how the real world works. And so when they see a pastor who's succeeding in managing and owning and operating a business, there's a level of, like, I'll follow you, not just because you know the word of God, but you also kind of know how life works.
Yeah, let me affirm that. So I was with one of our volunteer leaders just this last week, and we were having dinner together, and we were talking about real estate. And he goes, let me tell you one thing that really attracted me to our church and you as my pastor is the fact that I knew that you knew where I was coming from, and the fact that I knew that you sold real estate and you were in the marketplace. He said, I've never been a part of a church where that had happened. And that really resonated with me. He's a very successful, he does really well for himself, and he is an incredible gift to our church. And he that's exactly what he said, that the fact that their pastor got the marketplace and understood what that was like. And I've heard that more than once. So I completely agree.
If there's any pushback to what I'm saying, like, it's maybe that, again, it's more in our mind. Like, you use the word, I don't want them to get distracted when they hear me use a real estate analogy. I'll give a quick story from my life. As I'm on staff at a church, we had my senior pastor on our show a while back. He owns multiple tree trimming operations. And so he talks pretty openly about his business. He doesn't go into numbers. The people have no idea what his businesses are doing, but they're successful. But he talks about it. I'm not saying everyone should do it exactly that way, but I don't see it as a distraction personally. Maybe it's because I have very much a bent toward that way of thinking. But in my mind, again, I just hear he's an expert in this area. He's got experience and can share stories from that. And so to me, it bolsters his presence on the stage. It doesn't take away or compete with or distract from it. But
That's good to hear.
so it's just a thought I'll throw out there for those.
Yeah, one more thing, John, if I could, is that is kind of a double-edged sword, because Eric, I think what people find is that it's one thing to have those one-on-one conversations with people in the marketplace that you can empathize with, and there's a level of, we get it. It's something else to celebrate that from a stage in a group of people, and that's one. In fact, when Jon and I began this community, that was one of the things really near the top, is to create a space where people could celebrate that without worried about people not understanding or just not agreeing even.
Yeah, there's a tension there for sure. Discernment, wisdom is needed. So I'm not disqualifying what you're saying at all. There's probably a time when it behooves you as a pastor to maybe not go too much down that road. But I'm always going to be quick to stand up and go, man, don't shy away from it, like embrace it. But your point, back to your original point, was it doesn't have to be a thing. And that supports something I say often too, is I don't encourage our pastors to ask permission. Just go do it. You don't have to advertise it. And if you're a hardworking pastor who loves God and loves his people, no one's going to have to be holding your feet to the fire. And did you get all your work done? Are you cheating the church? Like, you're serving them. You're going to produce results.
Yeah.
And you have the capacity to do it in multiple arenas.
Yeah. And I don't think my ministry stops at the church.
Exactly. 100%. So having gotten all that out of the way, let's go back to my question. How did you get into real estate? And I want to hear about your early experience as you came up in the church world.
Yeah. So I jumped into ministry right out of college, and became an assistant pastor at a church in Indiana. And the type of churches that I served in were pretty hardcore. I mean, we expected a lot of staff and from the staff, and so you were fully committed, and the idea of doing anything outside of the church was not even worth talking about, because it wouldn't have been allowed. So we worked really hard, but got paid very little, and it was expected that my wife would work. And when I approached the pastor about the possibility of my wife stepping away from work once she had children, I almost lost my job, because that's not even a joke. Like, that's exactly what happened.
Can I interrupt real quick and ask, when you say my wife was expected to work, was there a salary for the work she was expected to do?
Yes,
she was paid at least?
We had a small Christian school.
Okay.
And so when we candidated at the church, if you will, it was kind of put out there that this would be something that she would do. And so I asked that question then, like, when we have children, I think she'd rather just stay home. And then the pastor went ahead and just pulled the offer. Then he said, I don't, so we knew going in that it was going to be full commitment from both of us. And yet, how it is, you want to give more to your church. So we gave back to the church more than her salary was, in tithes and offerings and all of that. But it got to the place where, we started off and making a salary. We lived in a duplex, and it became very production oriented. And our pastor wanted us to have baptisms every Sunday. And it got to the place where if we didn't have a baptism, he actually reduced our salary that week, and it would continue to be reduced until we had a baptism, and then it would go back up incrementally. And it created this spirit, this attitude about serving, that everything revolved around whether or not you had somebody for the water on that Sunday, and it became all consuming. Now, meanwhile, I'm doing everything else I'm doing, 60 to 80 hours a week at the church, and it's just embarrassing to think about serving in a church like that and giving your heart and giving your all, and feeling very defeated, because of a lack of production. And so we eventually felt like we needed some more education to get better at all of this. So I went to a small college in Texas that was a church-based school that was influencing the pastor that we had come from. So it was the frying pan into the fire. But I got good at it. I mean, I got good at at production and working hard to get folks to church and all of that. But the whole time I was there, always had a side hustle because, again, paid very little, and there was just no way to make it financial. My wife was cleaning houses, and we had, of course, 2 kids that, if you were on staff, they had to go to the Christian school, and you had to pay tuition. And so it was the requirements were such that there was no way that we could afford to live, and so there was an expectation that you'd have to do work on the outside. So I was a contractor for the Dallas Morning News. I had a lawn care business, and then I eventually became a flat roof specialist, and I would repair flat roofs and replace flat roofs on businesses. And I did that up until the day we left. And God just did some beautiful things in our hearts and lives, and we realized that this type of ministry was not healthy for us, and I felt like there had to be a better way to do church. And my good friend Randall, who lived up here in Virginia, was looking to start a church, going through a very similar journey that I was going through, and invited us to join him. And so he said, "I can pay you." He said, "I think I can pay you for 18 months, maybe 2 years." And God threw me that as a lifeline. And so we left Texas and moved to Virginia, and that was in 2005. And it's been a beautiful thing. And he paid me a living wage that I could actually live off of. And so to make the transition into real estate, the market was starting to tank a little bit, and we were in a very hard hit area in 2006, 2007. And we knew a lot of people were struggling. And so I also had a daughter that was about to start college, and we didn't want her to get student loan debt. So we determined to try to help her cash flow her college tuition. And I needed income. And Randall, my friend who was my pastor, had suggested real estate. And I had a good friend that was a realtor who had encouraged me for a while to get into real estate because I was very interested. I think I bugged her so much that she finally just wanted me to get my own license. And that's how I jumped into real estate. But for us at the time, it was about a $2,000 investment to take the classes and to pay for the different memberships. And honestly, gentlemen, we only had $4,000 in the bank. That was all the money in the world that we had. And so for us to take 50% of what we had saved up and jump into real estate was a huge risk. And I am not, I don't take decisions lightly. My personality is to weigh everything and then still not be sure, but do it anyway. And so we did it. And my good friend Beth, who was the realtor, encouraged me and helped walk me through the process. And I jumped into real estate. And boy, I tell you, within 45 days, I had my first closing, and I got Rookie of the Year. It just took off for me, and it was like a very comfortable way to earn an income. And I was just an assistant pastor then, so it was easy to work everything else I had to do around that job, and it did very, very well for me.
That's awesome. So let me jump in with a couple questions here. Going back to that early part of the story, I think the theme in there that I wanted to hear, I want our audience to hear is not, you might be in an extreme setting with some of what you're describing. And by the way, you had told me if you want to go deeper into this, you can, but you had said in our conversation that, there were other metrics that you were being measured on. You had to have X amount of, salvations credited to you that week, or, X amount of gospel conversations. And if you didn't have guests showing up in church as a result of that, like all of that was directly tied to your salary. So that's kind of extreme, I think. But what's not extreme is just very unrealistic expectations being placed upon people who work in ministry with pay that doesn't come anywhere close to matching those expectations. That's probably a very soft way of saying it.
Yeah.
So my question in that season, I heard you say you were doing some entrepreneurial things. One quick question: did you enjoy those things that you were doing when you had your lawn care business, the flat roof thing? Like, was that an enjoyable thing, or was that like a grind just to be able to do ministry?
No. No. So my personality is such that I'm going to enjoy whatever I'm doing. And I love the people that I served. What I didn't enjoy so much was the fact that it took so much away from my family. Because literally I would drive my flat roof doctor van to work in my suit I would work at the church, have my work clothes with me, clock out at 4 o'clock, change into my jeans and my t-shirt, get in my van, and I would work until it got dark.
Wow.
And sometimes I worked all through the night if I was doing roof replacements and stuff like that. And it was a lot, and you don't complain because you're doing it for Jesus. I mean, that's the line, right? You're doing all of this for Jesus and for an eternal reward or souls or whatever. But to say I would enjoy it, yeah, I enjoyed just about everything I did. I mean, I'm that kind of guy, but it was not enjoyable to feel like you had to do it just to be able to breathe. Yeah, there's so many stories of God providing for us in all of that. But let me give you a little snapshot of the church that I was a part of in Texas was a larger church, and they actually held a conference every year where pastors would come and learn to do ministry the way that we did ministry. And the pastors were in a meeting one time, and the financial secretary was doing a presentation about budgets and everything. And one of the pastors that was visiting said, "How is it that a church this size has so many staff members?" And she made this statement: "We pay them next to nothing until they can't make it anymore. And then we find somebody else who will work for next to nothing."
Unbelievable.
Now they had to walk that statement back, right? In other words, like, she said what everybody knew, and then they had to make a correction to the next session and say, "Hey, she overstepped. That's not really how it." But that is how it is. I mean, that we'll find somebody who will do it, right? And it was considered. Meanwhile, the pastor's not suffering like that, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under a bus, and I feel like and good for him, because he had other ways to make money and he did very well for himself, and I was happy for him. But it didn't seem like everybody else had the same option,
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. Like, that's the part she wasn't supposed to say out loud. It's that narrative that exists. But when we call it the starving pastor, that's what we call it around here. It sounds horrible. Like, I don't want my pastor to starve, but I'm kind of comfortable with it. Like I'm okay just kind of looking the other way, all the while expecting an unrealistic amount from my pastor or my church staff or whatever the case may be. So the reason I asked the question, why did you like those other things? Because there's kind of a dynamic I just wanted to tap into. On one hand, you're an entrepreneur at heart, whether you recognized it or not. Like, there's something in you that enjoys the businesses that you're doing. But in those days, it's because I have to do it in order to support the very little money that I'm getting in ministry. And again, it's not even the money that I'm focused on. It's the expectation that even though we know we can't pay you, we still expect you to be here and give your time here. So, like, if I were to speak to a pastor in that situation, whether they're the lead pastor, because we meet those guys, that often they're the senior pastor that's barely scraping by, but you go down a level, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but you go step down to the church staff level, they're not making as much as the pastor. My encouragement, our encouragement to them would basically be, that's great, but you need to limit the amount of time you're working in church. If the church cannot pay you what what you need to be getting paid, go build a business and give the church what you're able to and do ministry out of what's left. And that sounds horrible when you say it out loud, but it's absolutely what I would encourage a pastor to do in that context. So you compare that to where you are today, you're in a healthier situation, and you're still doing something entrepreneurial, but they're kind of different. And I think what I'm trying to really tap into is this. One of the messages misunderstandings that people have around EntrePastors is they think that we're trying to help pastors make more money in the marketplace so their churches don't have to pay them. And that's not the message of EntrePastors. Like, we are not playing into that expectation of, hey, let your pastor go do another job so that you as a church don't have to pay. We love the stories where we hear pastors giving some or all of their salary back because their business is thriving so well. Praise God for that. That's 100% between them and the Lord, but we don't see it as an expectation. We certainly aren't coming at it from that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and our church is in a place now where they could pay me more. I mean, we're, and I don't know, like, size wise, if that matters as much as income, right? As in this conversation. But to me, the benefits of being able to earn an income outside of the bubble of the church it outweighs even any pay raise they might want to give me. I mean, and they have consistently tried to give me pay raises over the years that I've turned down because I make good money now I'm with the downturn of the market, I may take them up on it this year, but it's not for us anyway. It's not a matter of whether they can afford to pay me more or if I can afford to pay somebody more. I think there are so many benefits for us as a church for me being in the marketplace.
Yep. Would you mind just list a few of those? I agree 100%. What are a couple that come to your mind? How does your church benefit by you being out in the marketplace, working in real estate and meeting people?
So they're okay. Number one, I can live generously, right? I'm able to give. And I've always wanted to be one of the biggest givers in the church. And I'm, as the church has grown, I'm not as much anymore, right? But but we are able to just give not just to the church, but to other organizations. We've been able to pay school bills. We've been able to help with automobiles. We've been able to do things that we just never would have been able to do with the salary the church would have paid. But we've been able to personally contribute to our retirement funds, cash flow college for our kids. We've taken some nice trips. But then as far as what the church has benefited from, we have made genuine friendships outside of the walls of our church that have been valuable to them. And like I'm the pastor friend that they have. You know what I mean? Like they don't go to our church, but I'm the one that they're going to call. Yep. And I'll just go down and I'll hug his neck when I know he's hurting. And he reaches out to me and says, "Can you say a prayer?" I mean, those types of relationships that are built that would not have been built if I was working 9 to 5 in an office all day long. There are so I haven't done it for a while, but just one Sunday I just looked around and there were 40 people in our church as a result of real estate. Wow. So my clients eventually learn that I am very invested in our church. And then if in conversation, comes up that they're looking for a place, or we start talking about that kind of thing, they visit one of the leaders that we have in our church now, Scott. He was a client of mine, and he has since gotten his real estate license, and he works with me in real estate. He is also on the leadership team at our church. They are the godparents of my grandbabies. I mean, and so there's other realtors that come to our church. It was somewhere in January, I just happened to look out and there was a whole row and a half of realtors and their families that work with me at Remax. I mean, that to me, and those are relationships I never would have had. The lady who got me into real estate, Beth, man, I get emotional because like we've been through a lot together and we don't work together anymore directly, but she's a wonderful gal who loves Jesus and was really concerned about her family and all of that. And then I look back and her brother is sitting with her at church and her sister-in-law is sitting with her at church and her daughter is excited about the Lord and is volunteering. And then her daughter's gotten her friend Amber to come. And then Amber brought her boyfriend and then Laney's family is now attending church. Amen. And I'm telling you, like, this is the real deal. This is where ministry is happening, and me getting up and preaching on a Sunday morning ain't cutting it. That's helping the people who attend, but it's not reaching the people who don't. And I'm not saying I'm even all that great at reaching people. I'm just saying, like, being real, and they know who I am, and they love me, not as a pastor, but just as a realtor. And then they find out I'm a pastor. Well, let's go check that out. But being able to be, they ask me to pray for events in town, or I'm the guy that if I'm at the banquet, they're going to ask me to pray. Right. I mean, I hate it, but right. Okay. I guess I should consider it an honor, but that's just some of the stuff. The benefits to our church are just incredible. And the lives that have been changed it's genuine, John. It is not like We're not pretending here. Like, we're not just playing church. Like, these are people whose lives are changed. Their 29-year-old daughter has breast cancer now, and she works with me in real estate. She comes every week now, like, brings her daughter, brings her husband. Then it's just because they know me and they know that I love the Lord, and they love the Lord too. They're just not loving him the same way I do. And
It's almost like you don't stop being a pastor when you go out into the marketplace and serve out there in that context of business. It's almost like the calling of being a shepherd is still on you, and you're still rubbing up against people and having kingdom conversations. That's what we've been saying all along. Like, we think it's a great thing to have pastors out in the marketplace. And that's really what I'm hearing you say. Like, where else would you have built these relationships? They're not coming through the door of your church on a Sunday without it.
No.
And here's an insight too. I just had this kind of epiphany listening to you share that. Look at this. Compare these two worlds. Go back to the early days. You're serving in, I'm going to call it a toxic environment where you are your pay is being negatively affected if these results are not being produced. We're going to punish you by taking away what little pay we're already, rewarding you with. Flip to the other side, we're going to release you, bless you to go out in the marketplace and actually earn more income than we're already paying you. And look at the results. The results, I would contend, are even better in that context than where you started. So
I would absolutely agree. And I tell you, the fallacy of the old way of doing church that I was a part of was the attitude was that the world was the enemy. And the only way we could reach the world is going out knocking on doors and passing out tracts. I'm not against any of that.
Sure.
Right. But then once we get them into the church, now we got to get them saved and baptized and get them to be like us. Right. And so it's very difficult to minister to people who you consider your enemies. The world is your enemy. But I met with a family yesterday. They were clients of mine, and Trace was an older gentleman, and we formed an incredible friendship, but he was unsaved and proud of it. And we had lunch together or breakfast together every 2 weeks. And he was so good for my soul. And we talked about the Lord, and he would look at me and say, I wish I had what you had, Eric, but I just can't have that kind of faith. Long story short, I don't know that he ever got saved, but I'm meeting with his son yesterday and his significant other of 33 years, planning his funeral. And I felt welcomed, and they loved me, and they hugged me, and I want to serve that family, and I want to bless them, but they're not the enemy. Yeah. They're my friends. And I just feel like you're exactly right. There is such a mind shift on how we do ministry in the bubble of the church, where like the world is the enemy. We have to go reach them, bring them in here, make them like us. That's not the model of Jesus. Jesus didn't say go out there and get them and bring them into the synagogue. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just
no, that's so good. And go ahead, Les.
I'm going to thank you, Eric, for sharing a beautiful story of the way that it can be, because you're talking to many people right now that if they do serve long enough, there's going to be a season or an occasion where, through no fault of their own necessarily, they're doing it in a begrudging way, or they feel like they're never enough. If you do it long enough, you have that. And so what you're talking about is a shift to where now you're serving joyfully and it's bearing fruit, and well, that's enough. You're doing it joyfully and it's bearing fruit, versus begrudgingly in a sense that you may not never be enough.
Thank you.
It's good.
And I don't feel beholden to the church.
Yeah.
And I think that there is and I think going back to what you were saying earlier, John, about there actually being like a level of respect from people who are in our congregation, who are in the business world or wherever, like knowing that their pastor's getting out there and hustling and doing a good job and is successful, that I'm able, like if I did not get a check from the church next week, we'd still be paying our bills. And there is, that changes the stance of our relationship a little bit. And I don't, I just have too many friends like that are in ministry, and I just don't want to go back to living that way, where I feel like I'm beholden to the church. And it's not that I'm not their servant. I'm the greatest servant in our church. I serve the Lord's church. That's my spirit. But the attitude, the attitude that I have to be careful, and I think there's a respect factor that comes with that. And I think when you have the respect, and I'm not saying that I'm respectful, but when you have their respect, they tend to listen to what you have to say, and your influence grows.
Yeah. Well, you can't learn from someone you don't respect. That's a parenting principle I share sometimes, is that if your kids don't, well, I heard this from my pastor, that if your kids don't respect you, they can't learn from you. But I think that applies to other things as well. And I think, to be blunt, what you're saying in more direct terms is, because you don't necessarily need your church financially, it takes some of that fear away of leading, and being in that position of I'm not afraid of pushback or someone getting upset about a decision.
Well, lest anybody from my church hears this podcast, I am grateful for my salary.
Amen.
And I really enjoy having that consistent automatic electronic fund transferred into my account every month. So thank you for that. Let's not entertain that conversation too much further,
Right.
But yeah.
Right. No, I'm right there tracking with
They
you.
would never. They just, they're
that is a real dynamic that we talk about, though. When you have a pastor that is solely dependent upon one source of income, albeit not a very great one, there's some really unhealthy things, unhealthy for the church as well as the pastor, where the pastor sometimes is in a position of, I'm not going to lead boldly. I'm not going to innovate and, challenge someone or confront a problem that needs to be addressed. Because at the end of the day, man, that person, that family, they're the power holders in our church. They sign my check. So that's a very unhealthy dynamic that we help set pastors free from, by not making them fully dependent on that church for income anymore. So, Eric, this has been so good, man. I knew this time was going to fly by really fast. Is there anything that you were hoping I was going to ask you that I didn't ask you? Anything else you want to throw out there for our listeners?
I know that one thing that really we talked about a little bit, but that had been something that I would love more clarity on is about the guilt associated with producing income outside of the church. Things that I've struggled with, and I think that I am in a better place now, but like my thoughts were like, would the church be better served if I was more fully focused, right? Like what programs aren't we doing? What am I not doing because I'm doing real estate, or how much? And the thing, like, I study a lot for sermons. I feel like that's one of my primary responsibilities is to prepare sermons. And I study a lot, never have deviated from that. But would our people be better served? And is it just morally right, for somebody who is paid by the church to seek extra income? And I feel like I'm in a much better place now with all of that. And a lot of that is just understanding what my giftings are. And I found that, and I don't know if this helps anybody, but I found the things that I felt guilty about were the things that I am not built to do very well anyway. And so the things that were not happening probably would not have been happening even if I hadn't been doing real estate. So we hired a guy. And so we hired Jared as our administrative pastor to get all the stuff done and create the systems and all of that. And he is doing a fantastic job. And what's amazing is now I don't carry any of that guilt because I know the work's getting done, and it's probably stuff that I wouldn't have been doing very well anyway.
Yeah. We know a pastor friend of ours. He was a guest on our show, Jody Pastori, he is an entrepreneur through and through. And there was a season in his pastoral ministry where he tried to kind of play the game of, like, not the game, but tried to fit that mold of, I will be a full-time pastor in my suit and tie in the church office, 40 hours, 50 hours a week. And he said it almost killed him. He said, I was unhealthy. I gained weight. I was having suicidal thoughts. Like, I was depressed. And he came to realize that God put that in him to be out in the marketplace, and he needed to be there. That's who God made him to be. And his church is thriving today, and so are his many businesses. And so, yeah, I would highly discourage a pastor from entertaining those voices of guilt of I should be doing this or that. And,
but they're real. So
yeah, they're real voices.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in here because Eric, I'll go ahead and share also. I have still some of those same thoughts. And I believe that I've got a very healthy outlook on all of that now through my own experience and my journey. And I haven't graduated from that school yet, but I think overall I've got a healthy view of this, but it's an everyday decision and struggle. So I'm gonna try to articulate just in a nutshell.
Good.
And then John, this would be a really good topic for probably another day, but here's the truth of it is, Eric, I could work harder in ministry related efforts. I know I could. I've done it. Okay. I mean, I've done it, been there, got the t-shirt. I could do more, because there's always more that we could do. There's always more things to prepare, always more outreach to do. I mean, it's people. How many people are there in our towns and our cities, to reach with the gospel? So, I mean, I personally could do a lot more, but you sense a but is coming. Okay.
Right.
But I would not be the overall person that honors the Lord with my entire life, because there's a cost to that. And what I would also be doing is taken away from some ministry and some kingdom related work that someone else could do just as well or better, because I step in and do that. And as I said, we're talking about a much, much larger subject now. But how I deal with that from day to day, Eric, is just to embrace the fact that, could I do more, work harder, check off more boxes, fill in the blank? Yeah, I could. Would I be the person, the friend, the dad, the grandfather, the husband? Would I be the person that would really honor the Lord in the best way possible with my life? Man, I don't think so. I don't think, because I've done some of that, and it just, I don't like the results. Does that make sense?
So good. So good. And I think we forget too that Jesus wants us healthy.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus cares about us. Like, his message in Luke 4 was not just for all the masses to heal the brokenhearted and to set the captive free. We're his mission as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he wants us healthy. And I think that me feeling like I needed to do it all would have kept me from hiring Jared and bringing them to our church. And he was in a place where he's being ministered to by our church at this point, right? And using his giftings. Yeah, I appreciate that. That helps.
Well, Eric, this has been so good. If someone wanted to reach out and connect with you, what would be the best way for them to find you, either online or social media or email? What would be the best way?
Yeah, just replog@gmail.com. My last name, REPLOEG @gmail.com. Of course, I'm on Facebook and all of that too, but I'm more of a stalker than I am a poster.
Yep.
I don't do a lot.
That's us too. But cool. We'll put that contact info in the show notes, and I'm sure this is just the beginning of a long relationship with you, Eric. You are in our free EntrePastors Facebook group. So if anybody wants to, that would be another place they could find you, would be to jump into the community there and connect there. But all the best to you, Eric, as you continue to serve God in pastoral ministry and real estate and some of these other new ventures that you and I talked about, some new ideas. Looking forward to our conversation we're having next week around our challenge. We'll kind of drill into some of that with you.
So this is the before picture, right? I'm going to go through your program, and then we're going to see where I'm at the end of it, right? So
it won't even be recognizable. Like,
I'm looking forward to it.
No, it's that John and I will have several houses at the end of the program. It sounds like.
If anybody wants to know more about it, I'm happy to talk to them. I love talking real estate.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. Well, Eric, thanks so much, man. Enjoy your day, and we'll be in touch soon. All right.
God bless you guys. Thank you so much for what you do.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastor's podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.